On Your Way Up. This is the journey of a kid with a big dream, and hopefully it'll inspire you as you're on your way up too.
I think we should start with introductions.
I think so too. It's a great place to start.
Okay.
You know what I think we should do? We should introduce each other.
Good idea.
Okay. I'll go first.
Okay.
So, what are some things I want people to know about you? Well, you're my mom.
Mm-hmm.
You're my mom. And you're my mom. So,
I am your mom.
Yes. All factual statements. But I'm just kidding. Let's see. Some real stuff. Well, we can start with your name.
That's a good place to start.
Yes. Your name is QuaWanna Bannarbie.
Mm-hmm.
Your hometown is Americus, Georgia. And you left Americus, Georgia when you joined the Navy after graduating from the Naval Academy. Once you were in the Navy, you did a lot of traveling and stuff. And you also met my dad.
I did.
In Japan. So,
I did.
You know, that's cool. After you met my dad, you got married, and you had me and my younger brothers. And now you're doing all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like writing. You're a published writer. Mm-hmm. And you sing in the praise and worship team from time to time at church. Mm-hmm. And you cook also.
I do.
Yes, you cook. And you garden.
I love gardening.
Yes, some of the stuff in the garden you use in your cooking, so it makes
do.
it taste even better.
Mm-hmm.
And then you bake a little bit too, here and there. I really like your brownies.
I do the baking for you all. I'm not really a baker.
That's okay. The brownies are great.
I'm glad you like them. I'm glad you appreciate my cooking and my baking.
I do, of course.
Well, what do I want people to know about you, Jenesis Bannarbie? You're a pretty cool daughter. I will say that. You are my oldest child, our oldest child.
Yes.
You're 17 this year. Mm-hmm. You're a summer baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, summer
July,
baby.
the best month.
If you say so.
The best month.
Okay. You're a senior in high school this year.
Senior.
So we are documenting your senior year journey, your transition from senior year to becoming an adult.
So excited.
I'm glad you're excited. You are loved by many people, including your mom and dad and your two younger brothers. You have a 14-year-old brother and a 10-year-old brother. You have loved science since you were about 4 years old. You've been just in love with the stars and space since then. So you knew from an early age where you wanted to go, that you wanted to reach for the stars. And as a result of that, you have a desire to become a mission specialist astronaut. Yep. And work for NASA. Mm-hmm. But before that, you would like to go into the military and go to school. You're looking at several schools, but your top choice.
Yeah, tell them my favorite.
Your top choice is the United States Naval Academy.
Yeah.
Go Navy, beat Army.
Yeah.
And although you haven't had time with the Navy yet, because you've been in a Air Force Junior ROTC program at your school, and this year in Junior ROTC, you will be a flight commander.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty good introduction.
I think so too, yeah.
You did a good job.
You did a good job also.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So, Jenesis, this is our first episode in our video series or our docu-series, and you are the main character. This is documenting your journey on your senior year, and that's the reason we named this On Your Way Up. Yeah, so this is our launch episode. How you feel about that?
I'm very excited. Ready for takeoff.
Ready for takeoff. That's good, since this is our launch episode, our first episode in the series On Your Way Up video series. So let's talk about why we felt it was important for us to document your senior year of high school. So the first reason was a selfish reason of mine. Yeah, selfish. I can be selfish. I'm your mom.
Okay.
Selfish reason of mine, so that we could document for you to be able to look back later at the things that you did during this year, the decisions you made, the challenges you faced, how you overcame those challenges, the things you did, how they turned out in the end. I'm hoping that this is going to be a testimony for you to reference yourself so that you can look back later when you have difficulties or hard times and you can see you overcame some things in this year. And so as you go forward into your adulthood, you can look back at your own testimony and see your own footsteps in the sand, as they say.
Yeah.
You think you'll take a look back at this series?
Probably. I mean, I'm a pretty nostalgic person. I like looking at old stuff. So maybe when I'm like, I don't know, like 30 or something, I'll look back and be like, was 12th grade me proud of me? Would be proud of me? And I'd be like, yeah, 12th grade me would be proud of me.
I think you're going to look at it before 30 years old.
You really think so?
I think so.
Probably.
We also thought it was important to do this particular first episode, because this first episode we're talking about storytelling.
Yes.
So we thought it was important for us to share a young person's story and journey, because from a youth perspective, there's some things that young people can learn from you in this transition year. What are some things you want young people to learn from you in this transition year? Or why do you think it's important for you to share this with young people?
I think it's important to share this. First is like kind of a source of inspiration, you know, kind of you can do it. If I can do it, you can do it too.
That's right.
But also as a guide for kids, because I know like for a lot of kids my age, we feel like we kind of have to do it ourselves, or like we're kind of just being cut off a little bit. It's like figure it out yourself. And sometimes it does feel like that. And, you know, I don't want them to feel like they're alone, because there's people who have done it before. I mean, you've done it before. My dad has done it before. Everybody's done it before. So there's no reason for us to like not know, because there's people who have experienced it and they can tell us. And then there's people like me and other people my age who are going through it at the same time. So, you know, for anybody out there who may be struggling and not really sure like where to turn and which way to go and what to decide, I'm hoping they can kind of see my story and use it as a guide for them so they can achieve their dreams.
That's cool, Jenesis. You're going to be like a teen video mentor.
Yes, teen video mentor. That sounds better. Take that, influencers.
Yeah, I think we just came up with that title.
I think so, yeah.
We should like dub it or something.
Yeah, like get a, what is it?
Trademark.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's important for not just young people, but I also hope that this is going to be a resource for parents and administrators and grandparents and youth pastors, so that it will help them to know how to prepare young people like yourself, young teenagers, as well as young adults, because we're not capping this at a particular age. There's a lot of people going through different types of transitions. So I think there'll be a lot of topics we're going to share in the series that are going to be helpful for anyone in transition, but particularly the young audience.
Yeah.
We hopefully, yes, the young people. We're also going to talk about the importance of seeing the people who contribute in this journey. When I remember, and I've shared with you these stories, I remember my senior year in high school, my guidance counselor was a huge contributor in the fact that I ended up at the Naval Academy. I would not have been able to even apply to the Naval Academy had it not been for Dr. Moselle Jackson, rest her soul. So I'm hoping that there will be young people that will see how important it is to recognize the contributors in their story, but also for the contributors like teachers and administrators and principals and mentors to see that they play a vital role as characters in a young person's story. Because what am I always telling you all, you and your brothers, about the characters in your story?
You're always telling us to equip people with the tools to tell our stories. So don't let them like form their own conclusions about us. Like, give them substantial evidence of who we are and what we do.
Absolutely, because you never know. They may be asked later when your name flashes across the screen and you know you're on your way to Mars. They may be the teacher or the principal or the administrator says, I taught her, or I contributed to her internship program, or I was her mentor for a certain amount of years. And so I'm always giving you tips about how to reach out to your mentors or your teachers and let them know about the things you're doing so that they can, as you said, tell your story well. Yeah. And then also the reason we did this episode is because going back to the youth and the youth perspective, you have always said to me that older people can learn from young people as well. So why do you think it's important for this young perspective to be shared?
Because, it's, I think, mostly a fresh perspective. Like, I believe that Gen Z is growing up in, like, a very different world than, like, maybe your generation, like, grew up in. Like, we're dealing with, like, a bunch of different stuff. Like, we lived through a pandemic. Like,
You did.
That's some crazy stuff. Like, not a lot of people can say that. And so, like, things that we're learning, like, at a young age, we can pass that on to younger generations who come after us, but also to older generations. Like, we're learning a lot about mental health, kind of, not, I won't say thanks to Gen Z, but I do believe, like, Gen Z and millennials have really brought about kind of a turn in how people view mental health.
Yes.
So older generations are kind of learning that, it's okay that if you need to, like, go to therapy or, like, just talk out your issues, it's not something you should be, like, trying to hide and stuff like that. There's no shame in, talking about your mental health, because it is important. It deserves to be talked about.
Yeah, you're right. And you often have said to me that wisdom does not come with age. And so we say to you that you have, great wisdom beyond your years. And that's because you have a strength in discerning and understanding things at a younger age. And so this is an opportunity for you to share some of that young wisdom, but it's also an opportunity for you to inspire other young people your age to realize that you all don't have to wait until a certain age to feel like you have wisdom to share or a story to share, because you all have stories.
We're all a story in progress.
We are a story in progress, and we're all on a journey. Yeah. So on your way up is telling your journey, but your journey is just to inspire alongside other people on their journey the same age as you are, or older, or even younger. Because we're hoping, as you said before, that someone else would be able to look at this that's coming behind you. They'll see what you have done and they'll learn from it. So you're setting the stage. You're setting the bar, as you said earlier. All right. So again, we said this episode is about storytelling, and I remember a story. You probably remember this story. When you were young, you were heading into third grade. You remember the name of your third grade teacher?
Miss McMullen.
Mrs. McMullen, yes. Mrs. McMullen. It was like a parent-teacher conference I showed up for. I think you were with me.
It was like one of those like PTA night things, like meet your teacher or something like that.
Yeah, like orientation or something like that. And I think you all had been in school maybe like 6 weeks already, but she had already learned that you were quite the storyteller. And she walked up to me and she says, "Oh, I just love reading Jenesis stories. I want to get her autograph now because she's going to be a great storyteller." You remember that?
I do. I remember that.
Yeah,
Miss McMullen.
You need to shout out Miss McMullen because she didn't get your autograph.
That's true, yeah. Miss McMullen, if you see this, like, hit me up or something. I'll give you the autograph. I promise.
So, I think it's from a young age, you have just, like I just shared, from a young age, you just love stories. Why do you think that is?
Well, I kind of have you to thank for that, actually.
Me?
So, yeah. So, when I was young, when I was a wee little lass, you used to read me stories all the time, little bedtime stories before bed. And, I always loved hearing about the stories and the adventures the characters would have. And oftentimes, I would, like, imagine myself, like, in the stories and kind of going along with them. And, doing all the stuff they were doing in the book. And what I kind of gleaned from that was that you can learn a lot from, like, stories. And I feel like from envisioning myself in those stories, it helped me, like, develop stories in my head and use my imagination more.
I agree. Stories are definitely a learning tool. Definitely. And I think teachers, especially, not just teachers in the classroom, but anything you're teaching, any topic you're teaching, storytelling, or even if you're speaking, storytelling helps to engage people. I remember you made a comment some time ago about children fiction books and how children fiction books are really good about engaging the audience and teaching a lesson. And you felt as though children fiction books do that even better than like young adult books or adult
Yeah.
fiction books?
I just think like they put a little bit more thought into like investing, like getting the reader invested in the story, I guess. Like I know for older people, like sometimes they have more mature taste, so they're willing for like slow boil kind of reads. You know, it doesn't have to be like, boom, Billy's on an adventure, he's gonna go, you know, find a golden treasure chest or something like that. They're like willing to sit through a slow burn. But like little kids, they don't want to hear about how like Billy went on this whole journey of personal self-discoverment. They're like, when does Billy find the golden treasure chest? Tell me now. So, you know, children authors, they kind of have to like pick up the pace a little, but keep it engaging at the same time.
Yeah. I like that you just said children authors, because that's another thing we want to impress upon our audience is about this is narrated in your voice from a young person's voice. And how important is it to you that they hear it from your perspective? You were sharing with me before about how you learned in English about the difference between using your voice and the first person perspective. Why do you think that's important?
Because, well, I learned the thing I told you about from English class, obviously, but we were talking about citations, right? They were teaching us how to do citations, and, you know, when you're doing citations, you're citing your sources. Mm-hmm. And so when it comes to finding sources online or anywhere, really, you want to try and get as close to the first, the primary source. And so the primary source is kind of someone who's been there, who was there. So let's say a natural disaster happened. A primary source would be someone who's like, was like right there, like they saw the wind blowing, they were like running through the rain, all that stuff. That would be a primary source. But a secondary source would be someone who like saw it on the news. So if you ask them, you know, how did the storm affect you? They'd be like, well, I mean, you know, my house is fine, but I saw like there was a lot of rain and wind and trees falling over, but I just saw that on TV. A primary source would be able to tell you like firsthand. It's like the rain was blowing so hard I could barely see in front of me. There was water just like washing down the road, and they can give you real details and tell you how it actually happened. Yeah. So it's the same thing with your story. You don't want, you know, secondhand people being like, well, I heard this about this person, and kind of giving their own opinions instead of the real story. Only you can kind of tell your story in the entirety and wholeness of it with the truth.
I like that. Only you can tell your story with the entirety and wholeness with the truth. That's really good. And I think that's important also for young people that's going through transition, because you all are applying who you are in online applications and resumes and things of that nature. And those things, they are a representation of you. Exactly, but that is not you showing up in front of someone. So this series, I hope, gives people an opportunity to know how important it is to give that primary source perspective, and also to inspire them and give them the tools to be comfortable doing that. Because as you have said before, it's not always, depending on who you're sitting with or who you're talking to, you're not always, you know, comfortable from the beginning with giving that perspective and that narrative. And so we want to inspire and influence people that you have a voice.
Exactly, yes.
Tell your story.
Tell your story.
Tell your story. So Jenesis, you said something a while ago that I loved, and we said we were going to add it to each of these episodes, and we're calling it Story It Up.
Oh yeah.
So why don't you tell everybody what Story It Up means, and then give them an example so they understand what that is. So when we use it in future episodes, they know what the segment is talking about.
Okay. So when you story something up, it's kind of like making it more exciting and engaging. You're not like lying, but add more details and like descriptive words to make it seem engaging. When you're writing to somebody, you're speaking to somebody, or communicating in any form, you want to make it sound engaging, like it's something they care about. Like, make them care. Don't be like, why am I reading this? Like, make it relevant to them and something they want to like. They want to know what happens next.
Yeah, that's really good. You got an example of Story It Up?
Yes. So let's say I'm writing like an essay or something, and the prompt is tell about a significant event in your life. So let's see. Let's pick a significant event. Let's say making a new PR, a new personal record, like a track for say. So instead of saying, you know, I broke my PR record, I was really excited when it happened, I got first place, you could say, I was coming up on the last 100 meters of my race, and I was in second place, but I wanted to win so bad that I started running, and I regulated my breathing, and I got my form together, and then all of a sudden, I was right across the finish line. I had finished first, and I looked up at the clock, and I had a new PR. I was so excited. I did a victory lap.
Yeah, it's really important, I think, with the Story It Up to help people to understand, like you said, is that one, as we reiterated earlier, everyone has a story, but engaging with the story based on your Story It Up points, people are going to remember you based on that, whatever details, those little details. And so even with the PR record example, like you said, if you say that you initially started out with 30:31 for your first 3-mile run, but you knew you wanted to best your PR, and then you ended with a 25:20. I don't know if that's a good number or whatever,
That's
but
a great number.
Yeah.
I mean, you fast if you run at a 25.
Genesis is a cross-country runner, or she just started running cross-country, so that's why we're referencing track. But anyway, so I think teaching people or helping them to understand the different ways to story it up in the different things that we'll be talking about in transition will help them to have memorable details, and whether it be advocating for themselves in an interview or on an essay or a resume, or even just conversation with somebody when they're given a pitch for what they can do and why somebody should hire them, then I think these nuggets in Story It Up are going to be beneficial.
Right.
So I'm glad you came up with that little tag of Story It Up. That's your own official new thing.
We should get that trademark too.
We should get that trademark. Well, that's going to do it for our first episode of On Your Way Up in this video series. How do you think we did, Genesis?
It was a successful launch.
Successful launch. NASA would like to hear that.
Yes.
Speaking of NASA, we're sporting our shirts from LA Pop Arts, and we're excited to be able to wear these shirts for our first launch episode in the On Your Way Up video series. For our next episode, we'll be talking about decision making. So we'll be talking about the challenges and benefits and sometimes the consequences of poor decision making.
What you looking at me for?
We can all learn from decision making. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
We can all learn from decision making. So for the next episode, you'll be able to find it here on YouTube. But to learn when that next episode will post, follow us on Instagram. Where can they find us at Instagram, Genesis?
At our Instagram handle, Jen and Q.
Jen and Q. Thank you again for watching On Your Way Up in our first launch episode about storytelling. Thank you for watching.
See you at the top.